first I want to thanks IP for hosting this excellent webinar and meeting. And my presentation is prognostic factor in craniocerebral penetrating injuries. We all understand that penetrating injuries of brain are very common in warfare, especially the gunshot penetrating injuries, as we see nowadays also. They are very common in warfare and especially developed countries. While low velocity penetrating injury, they are more common in developing and underdeveloping countries like here. In our state, we have a rural areas, so interpersonal assault by bamboo stick or battle axe is very common. The penetrating injury with weapon impacted presented to hospital or to department is very unusual. So now penetrating injuries are very much, they're increasing in war practice and in civil, so it needs a consent to all neurosurgeons. So they are the various objects which can penetrate the skull, or case reports are there. Before I go for the prognostic factors of penetrating injury, just I want to uh, talk about the dynamics of the penetrating injury so we understand better. So penetrating injuries can be low velocity penetrating injury and high velocity penetrating injury, where the velocity is a critical factor. Low velocity penetrating injury where speed is 2500 feet per second, and that disruption and laceration of tissue causing. The high velocity penetrating injury, they can be supersonic waves, velocity is more than 300 meter per second, and in subsonic it is less than 300 meter per second. So degree of tissue injury is proportional to quantity of energy delivered, and that is related to velocity. So in a low velocity, there is absence of significant impact forces, so recovery is very good. While in high velocity, there is a cavitation and shock waves are there that cause a lot of damage to the surrounding structures, and outcome is usually poor. If we see the pathophysiology, any penetrating object cause two changes. Either there is a primary impact or there is a secondary impact. The primary impact create three waves. Primary wave, these produce direct crush injury by a projectile resulting in the permanent cylindrical cavity. While secondary injury causes the radial expansion and then contraction around the permanent cavity that cause the temporary cavity, and while it is contracting, there can be influx of the material from the wound and cause the infection sources. In tertiary waves, they are the sonic waves. They are very high speed. Their intensity is very high, maybe more than 100 atmospheric pressure. But their brevity is only for very short time, maybe 2 microseconds. So their effect is less. And overall, this primary impact is very, very important for causing cerebrovascular injuries. So this is just a diagrammatic presentation. This is the permanent cavity here, and because of expansion, then there is a contraction causing this temporary cavity and damage to the brain tissues. As far as secondary impact, there is a raised ICP which causes a lot of problem, and edema starts within 6 hours and persists for 48 hours. Cardiopulmonary changes because of the rostrocaudal displacement of the brain tissue because of the pressure gradient difference at the foramen magnum cause herniation at the tonsillar herniation or herniation at the foramen magnum. So this is just a small video showing low velocity. There is a absence of impact, substance force, so causing not much injuries. In high velocity or bullet injury, they can be high velocity bullet wounds or low velocity bullet wounds. In high velocity bullet wounds, there is a very high speeding. They goes and cause lot of vibration and waves are formed, and there is sudden rostropodal herniation and cause death. While in low velocity, there is a hemorrhage, edema. It is gradual, so prognosis is better than high velocity injuries. In sorry. So this is the just a video of showing how this causing changes. There is a permanent cavity, hemorrhage, and edema, and they recollect to and move to the other side. Other thing is coagulopathies. Coagulopathies are there, and which cause their systemic changes, and at the local level at brain there is a release of thromboplastine causing the bleeding there, and the platelet numbers also decreases, and aggressivity also decreases, that causes the coagulation changes. So in a study it was found that in 71% of survivors and in 94% of non-survivors there was some form of coagulopathy in all the patients. Now we come to the prognostic factor. Prognostic factor can be general and they can be very specific prognostic factor. Specific prognostic factor may be weapon related and radiological factor. So general prognostic factor are age. We know advanced age associated with poor prognosis because they have a lot of comorbidities as well. And GCS, less GCS, 3 to 5, poor prognosis, usually have a good prognosis if GCS is more than 10. Hypotension, admission, dilated fixed pupil, coagulopathies, I already told you, high ICP, and major vascular injury in form of the injury of the major vessel or pseudoaneurysm, they have a usually poor prognosis. Multilobar or eloquent area involvement, like here, there is a multilobar involvement. So they have poor GCS as presentation and poor prognostic prognosis. Associated multiple injury, patient usually fall where there is injury, he falls. So he can have a associated spinal injury. So that is again a poor prognostic factor. Suicidal attempt because of the closed end injury, they have a poor prognosis. Now, sometime there is a retained this body. We don't operate with this. It passes through the sinuses. There is a dural tear. So all these factors may contribute to the infection formation. Like here, it's called infection. So it definitely showing toward the poor prognostic factor. Other general prognostic factors are seizure. Seizures in 50% of the injury, seizures are there. But multicentric study has shown that in long term, we don't need to give anti-epileptic, but the patient can have seizure. But in our routine practice, we always give anti-epileptic to all the patients. Delay in effective resuscitation, because early resuscitation definitely improve the outcome. Children have better prognostic factor than adult. Then any patient who has a wound less than 2 centimeter or the no exit wound, means the speed of penetrating object was less, so they have definitely better prognostic outcome.
Professor Sinha?
Yes.
Professor Sinha, I request you to give some time to Professor Goyi also, because
I'm going fast. So now type of ballistic injuries. These are the, so ballistic is a very important, especially wound ballistic, great area rotation along the leg axis, which cause fragmentation and deformation. And then as I told, velocity is the important factor, but with velocity, deformation and fragmentation is very, very important. Trajectory passing through the eloquent area, definitely poor prognostic factor. Strike as 90 degree had maximum injury. Tangential wound or gutter wound, they don't penetrate in the skull, but they can cause hematoma, superficial brain injury, and poor prognosis, but they are usually have a good prognosis. Unexploded missiles definitely have a we should remove because they can cause toxicity and delayed detonation. Migratory projectile, they can go from one ventricle to other ventricle if they are in ventricle, or they can go to in the substance. They can cause because of weight hematoma, necrosis, and migration infection have a poor prognosis. So this is an example of this pellet here migrated to other ventricle cause hydrocephalus or poor prognosis. Weapon impacted or not? If weapon is impacted at the site of scene, uh, these definitely have a poor prognosis because usually they are removed in zigzag fashion. So it should not be removed at the site. Now, radiological factor, multiple injuries, ventricular hemorrhage, compressed cisterns, ICH large, and they're all toward the poor prognosis. Then size, shape, and depth of penetration is important. Then we know the vascular complications are there in 30% of cases with 17% mortality. Especially it is more in children if the injury is toward the transorbital route. So I want to share few of my patient. This is a patient assaulted by a battle axe. See, this is a long handle, and we couldn't do the CT scan. This is the X-ray showing all metal part inside. This is we are removing, holding this handle by the arm, and this is 1 year after the surgery. Patient has minimal weakness on the hand and foot, and patient improved. Now he is married, son, father of one son. This is assaulted by X. It is superficial, low velocity injury, so outcome was good. This is another patient showing injury by the assaulted by the sickle, and patient has a good prognosis because it was only superficial penetrating injury. Now, self-inflicted injuries are very common, especially in the psychiatric patients. So this is the patient hammered to attempt the suicide, and this was just created the suprasagittal injury, and we could manage it by just putting a gel foam and pressure, and patient improved after surgery. Now, in children, it is very uncommon. The fellow was assaulted by a caliper, and but it was removed without any neurological deficit. There was no vascular injury. Sometimes conservative approaches are also used in some patient where we think that it was superficial, and we just remove, and serial CT scan were done to see the injury extent. This is another patient. This is the metal fragment entry. This is inside the brain, but we could remove it and patient improved. Wood injury is very special because they, if CT is done, they show the just air bubble appearance. So MRI is very important in this patient. So if we suspect wood injury, MRI should be done. So this is a postoperative CT and patient. There are few cases where stone went inside. This is the stone we removed. Now, as for the high velocity penetrating injury, the scenario was changed after the Second World War, when Cushing included all these guidelines, early transfer, good anesthesia, antibiotic, and dural closure, and very tight skin closure, and radical debridement. So mortality rate decreased from 54% to 28%. So this is of one of our case. We removed the bullet and patient improved. Sometimes there is a retained splinters, so we don't need to remove because they are in very deep or eloquent area. So we just have to follow off. If the meningitis, treat meningitis. If there's hydrocephalus, treat hydrocephalus, and the CSF treat them accordingly. This is another interesting case presented to us, assaulted by pellets in both orbit. And when we did the lateral,
give time for Professor Goyi because 7 o'clock we have to start.
Just 2-3 minutes. 2 minutes. So this is a pellet here, and there was no vision, so we didn't do anything. This is a girl presented with the. This is a girl presented with the fall and handle of bicycle injured the girl, and this is the bone spicule hematoma. We suspected vascular injury. So on angiography we found a aneurysm here, and this is a bone piece. This is an aneurysm. So we planned to do the surgery, and in surgery we could remove it. This is the bone piece. The aneurysm was dislodged, and there was a small hole. We couldn't block it, so we put a clip. So this is the bone piece. This is the pseudoaneurysm. This is the post-op angiogram showing the good distal circulation. It's a post-op. So I want to just tell in summary that early resuscitation and good anesthesia, imaging, and previously what we were thinking of radical debridement is not necessary, because after Iran or African one, conservative is important, and showing the same. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hiki. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sinha.